from our designs for housing in small communities, which can really revolutionize the way that care work is done. This is a picture from Vancouver, British Columbia in Canada, of a co-housing community called Windsong, where so many families live together in one sort of co-housing community that many of the care needs of a single family are now shared amongst many. So let me move to my second principle, and that is starting from the body. The body has often also seemed like an afterthought in urban design or something to be controlled and feared. It seems obvious to say, we all have bodies, but how many times have you come into a space in the city and thought, wow, it's like nobody considered that actual human beings would need to be here? Or worse, we find hostile design, which is meant to exclude people from sitting or sleeping or even being present in urban spaces. And even beautiful new spaces designed in cities can go unused because there's no bathroom, or there's nowhere to sit, or there's no shade, or somewhere to access water. So it's very important to remember that we live the city in and through our bodies. Feminist theory has always paid attention to bodies, in part because discrimination against women has often been rooted in body differences. But we can all take on this way of thinking, recognizing that we all have shared needs as human beings with bodies, but also remembering that we have different experiences in our bodies and that we may have some different needs as well. So one of the ways that cities can promote inclusivity in a feminist perspective is to pay attention to the needs of different bodies within cities. And I think this goes a long way to signaling inclusion, where you have places to rest, you have a little seat in the corner of a toilet where a toddler could be placed while you're trying to use the bathroom yourself. We have family restrooms, or restrooms that are accessible for all genders, and many other things that we'll talk about today, but noticing bodies and caring for bodies is part of building a feminist city. Okay, my third principle is to think about bringing the margin to the center. So much city building has started with this idea of a typical user who is an adult man, but not elderly. He's cisgender, able-bodied, moving along by himself. Has paid employment, he has neurotypical, he's straight, and so on. And along with this very specific list, we have this idea that somehow he is the universal figure, that he represents everybody, when in fact, he is only a small percentage even of men in the city. So instead of representing the majority, this person really represents the minority. Whereas groups such as women, children, the elderly, disabled people, newcomers, neurodiverse people, poor people, and queer people have often been treated as niche users whose needs are exceptional and extra. But really taken together, this group, all of us, we are the majority. So borrowing from the writing of bell hooks, a feminist principle to keep in mind is moving the margin to the center. So when we're designing now for the needs of women, as many of our panelists spoke about before, you're actually designing for the majority, which includes men and many other groups as well. So we can see some examples around the world of switching this thinking and bringing the supposed minority to the center. So the concept of aging-friendly cities. For example, Singapore is a city like many others with a rapidly aging population that needs to think about ways to keep the city very accessible for elderly people, which includes a lot of designs in the transportation system. Here we see Braille on a handrail, so for someone who is using Braille to read rather than eyesight. And honestly, who doesn't want a more accessible urban environment with less stairs and barriers? All of us would benefit from that. And similarly, we're seeing the rise of child-friendly cities. Children are not a group who tend to have a voice in cities, and who are often kind of left out of how we think about the functions of cities. Bratislava, which is pictured here in Slovakia, we see here a streetscape that is temporarily designed around children. And one of the key principles here is to think about children's spaces as not just the playground in the park, but as including the streets and the sidewalks and other kinds of public areas. It's also very important to keep in mind with the child-friendly city to pay attention to girls so that we don't end up with parks that are just full of football pitches and skate parks, as much fun as those can be. So organizations like Make Space for Girls in the UK are also working to design with girls to create play and recreation spaces that feel safe and welcoming for them. Okay, moving on, rethinking safety. So important right now as we're thinking about the International Day for the Elimination of Violence Against Women. Too often, safety interventions in cities start and stop with more lighting, cameras, and policing. But there's little evidence that these things actually make women safer, and they don't tackle the kind of violence that most women face on a day-to-day basis, which is domestic violence in the home or from people that they know. So what if we started thinking about safety as something that is connected to wider, collective, state-supported care policies? In other words, safety from the top down. So my apologies for a very outdated meme, but what if I told you that care and safety are the same thing? So we are told that safety looks like more policing or tightened control of urban spaces. I apologize if the font is a little small there for you. And women, of course, are also told that in order to be safe, we have to adjust our own behavior, how we dress, where we go, what time of day we go out at, who we're with, and so on. But that's the tip of the iceberg. If we look below the iceberg, the things that would actually create safety would include things like affordable housing, free childcare, excellent health care and mental health support services, a universal basic income, which would be especially helpful for caregivers, vibrant mixed-use urban spaces, wide range of economic and educational opportunities. These are the kinds of things that would allow women to have the economic and social independence that would help to avoid or be able to leave situations of abuse and to simply have the autonomy and freedom to make the choices they want to make in their own lives. Okay, the final principle that I will wrap up with today is a reminder that if the process isn't feminist, the outcome won't be feminist either. Feminist urban interventions always insist on taking the lived experience of women and their everyday lives seriously. And this means really deeply engaging with women and girls and other marginalized people in our cities and